just setting up to do a slightly surreal painting. Oh, what's that? So I've got my watercolor set up here. I've got some neutral tint, Prussian blue, raw umber, cad yellow light, and alizarin crimson. And then I've got some leftovers. There's a bit of orange there and some other stuff from a recent day at the beach. So I'm going to use a mix of some of that to put in some washes in just a second. So the idea here is I'm not going to do a realistic depiction. I'm just going to be inspired by a couple of scenes that I came across recently and work out some surreal elements into that. Oh, thank you very much for the compliment. I don't know how to say your username, but thanks very much. Okay, so let's get going. I've got my big mop synthetic brush, and I'm going to grab a little touch of the Prussian blue and mix it in with that kind of browny color that I had left over from the other day. And I'll use that to put in a wash across the top third or so of the painting. Get a bit more on there. So I'm painting onto dry paper at the moment. And what I'm doing as I apply this very light wash is I'm just trying to keep my brush strokes nice and steady and make sure I go all the way from the right-hand edge to the left-hand edge of the paper. Now, as I do this and work my way down, obviously I'm going to run out of paint, so that's going to, it's pretty much gone, isn't it? So that's going to create a natural lightening of the sky as you know, I go from top to bottom. Now, of course, you know, that's only a very pale wash, so it doesn't matter too much really, but it's just to begin to establish something going on there. Okay, so next thing then go a little bit darker, come back in with some of the Prussian blue again. And we'll pick up some of this kind of purpley colour. We've got on some of that crimson that we had left over from the other day. And perhaps a touch of this yellow that was left over as well. So we've got a very weak wash of bluey green. Perhaps gone a little bit too greeny there, so we'll pick up a bit more of the blue. And what I'm going to do is use some of that to suggest some very distant cliffs. Now you can see I've got a little bit of a bead forming at the bottom of that wash, and I'm going to leave that there and hope that it doesn't move too much, because hopefully when that dries it will kind of cauliflower into the rest of the wash, and that'll create some nice automatic texture. That's the hope. You can never be too sure what's going to happen with watercolor, so that's part of the fun. Okay, and while I've got that color on my brush, let's put a little patch of that same color in there, and again got a nice bead forming there. Okay, so just a quick rinse of the brush, and if you've seen the thing at the top here, I'll answer live chats every few minutes, so when I take a little break from painting to step back from my work, then obviously I'll have a quick look at the live chats. Now, although I said I was going to leave that bead, you can see it's actually becoming ready to pop there. So I'm just going to pick up some of that, I think, with my paper towel, because I don't really want too many runs going down the paper. So although I said I was going to leave it, we'll pick up some of that. And that's going to create a little bit of texture anyway. We'll do the same on that one. There we go. Okay, so let's get back to what I was planning to do. So now I'm going to use a weak wash formed from that little patch of brown, again, that I got left over from the other day. We'll pop that in with the green. And we'll use that to come in here. And add a different color to these distant cliffs. And if this mixes in with the green I've put down, that's absolutely fine. But I do want to go a little bit more warm in terms of color now as the cliffs get a little bit closer. So we'll grab a little bit of the alizarin crimson. Now this is quite a strong color, so I don't need to add very much. Mix it in with the green, perhaps a bit more. Perhaps we'll see if we can get some of that orange in there from the other day. Now the washes I'm putting down at the moment, they're not going to look all that impressive, but the hope is that when I put down some more bold work in the foreground, these are going to act as a very distant background and give the work a sense of depth and distance. So it's quite deliberate that these are very loose and simple, these washes at the moment. So get a little bit more orange in there. A little touch more of the red. So I added a bit too much red there, you can see. But we'll still put it in, see what we get. Yeah, that's not too bad for now. Okay, let me clean my brush again. And we'll pick up some of that leftover yellow. Hopefully that's going to, that's a little more browny than I had intended, but that's okay. It'll work for what I'm doing today. And then I'll come back in and pick up that leftover green. Now that run going down the cliff face isn't quite what I intended, but on these particular cliffs, there are patches of greenery that work their way down a lot across the cliff face. So what we'll do is we'll make use of that little event, just modified a bit so it looks a little more intentional. And there we go. So we've got the beginnings of some distant cliffs. Perhaps just, let's grab a bit more green. Put it on the top there. Okay, so the next thing then is to hint at the sea coming in here. So just going to clean my brush again. While we're doing that, we'll just lift off, if we can, some of those little, it's not that critical, but some of those little spots of colour that I inadvertently put down. So that lifted off a couple of them, but not most of them. But as I say, I'm not too concerned about that. All right, so let's begin to put in some water then. So we'll pick up a little bit of the Prussian blue. And what I'm going to do to begin with is just put in a single brush stroke, a little bit separated from the land. Across there. So that's worked out okay. And then we'll grab a bit more of that blue, go a little darker in tone. And then I want to go darker again. So I'll put a bit more of the paint in there. That's not coming out quite as strong as I'd hoped. So I'll come back. There we go. That's a bit more like it. And again, that will do for the moment. Okay. So again, just having a think about where to go next. Just make sure that so yeah, I don't know how well it's coming across on camera, but you can see the bead that I did leave is forming some nice cauliflowers off in the distance there. So that's kind of cool. That's good. What I think I will do is just grab a smaller brush. And what I'm going to do is just try, we'll see how well this works, try and pick up that little bead and then use it to create some fine lines to suggest the shoreline. So that didn't work very well at all. That just popped the bead, but that's okay. It didn't actually really pick up any colour. Oh no, so there's hardly any pigment in there. Okay, not to worry, that sort of got rid of the bead anyway, so that's fine. So I'm going to switch to a square brush now. So going to this one, nice flat. And what I will do is, you can see the wash is almost automatically formed a little V there, as if it was a rooftop. And in my reference, there are some buildings here. So what I'm going to do is make use of that shape that's been created for me. And sticking with the blue theme I've got, that's mixed into a bit of the green that was there. We'll mix that in with some of the brown. So we get kind of a deep green there. And we'll use that to begin to put in some buildings here. I'm not sure how much I like that green. But we'll leave it for the moment. We'll leave it for the moment. Okay, so next thing then is I want to blast in a wash for this area here. So I think I'm going to go with a pale purple. We'll see what that looks like. Let's get some of the cad yellow. And actually, despite what I just said, I'm going to mix that in with that grey that I had. And then pick up some of the... What was I talking about? Purple. I picked up yellow. I'm not quite sure why I did that. I think that's a bit of a tactical error there. Let's try that again. Let's clean up that stuff. Yeah, so while I'm having a think, so let me have a look at the chat and see if I can answer some questions. What have we got? Oh, thank you very much, Black Swan. So the idea is, the cliffs and the sky were inspired, and the sea are inspired by a place called Sidmouth, which is on the coast near where I am. And there's a promenade here, and people walk along the promenade along the seafront. And so that's the inspiration for the guy. But I like adding a surreal touch to many of my paintings. So my plan is, you can see in pencil here, I've got a cow lying down behind this guy, and then the rear end of another cow here. So my plan is to pop in some light washes of watercolor, as you can see, to suggest the distance. And then I'm going to put in some washes of watercolor in the foreground, and then come in with interactive acrylic to depict this surreal scene. So it's going to be a mixture of people walking along, but unusually for the urban environment, there are going to be cattle mingling among them. So I've just popped in 2 animals and 1 person, but I may add more as we go along. My brush is not a Skoda. No, these are all synthetic brushes. The one I'm using at the moment, this big mop, is a Raven. This one here that I've got on camera at the moment, that's a Raven by Jackson. So that's that one. Thank you, Black Swan. Glad you're enjoying it. That's cool. Okay, so yeah, the Ravens. Yes, thanks, CT. The Raven is really good. I really like those brushes. Okay, so I'm going to go back to painting now. But yeah, feel free to fire away with more questions if you've got them, and I will answer as we go along. So right, I'm going to try and do what I intended to do before. Try and actually create a purpley grey this time. So a little bit of the Prussian blue. And then a touch of the alizarin crimson. Let's get a bit more. I'm going to perhaps mix it into these leftovers here, just so that it's not too pure a purple. And we'll see what that looks like in just a second. Let me put this down. So I don't want it to be too strong a wash, but we'll pop it down. So let's see how we go. Okay, so it's not that purpley, but I quite like the color. So we'll keep going. And I'm using the directions of brush stroke that I'm using to suggest a little bit of perspective. But as this is a painting predominantly, or to some extent from the imagination, I don't have to worry too much about being exact in terms of my perspective or color. But obviously I want it to be an effective picture. So I'm picking up some. Now this is one of the advantages of using a palette you haven't cleaned from a previous painting trip, is you don't waste paint. But one of the disadvantages is you tend to pick up bits of dried paint, as you can see there. So we will attempt to lift those out. This might add some nice textures to the wash anyway. I think what I'll do is get a piece of the paper towel. I'll just swipe through there. I've got most of them. There we go. Okay, that'll do for the moment. So I need to get some colour in here. Now, in reality, there are some rocks and a pebble beach down here. I'm not sure that I want to include that. Maybe I think I'll suggest it, and then at some point I need to kind of fill in this blank bit here. But then once I've done that, then I can move on to my acrylics and actually start on the main characters. So I think what I'll do, we've got. I think I'm going to put some light pink in here for the pebble beach. Again, just a very simple treatment at this stage. Let's go to the flat brush just to change things up a bit. So a little bit of alizarin crimson. And come back in with our horizontal brush strokes. Now I made the wash a little stronger, you can see there, than I had before. So we'll make the colour a bit stronger as we come towards the foreground. And then just to mix things up a little bit, we'll just scumble in that middle. Okay, so what I've done so far is I've covered most of the paper with the watercolor. So that's going to give me a reasonable base upon which to start painting in earnest now. And just checking my channels on my laptop here, just making sure everything's working correctly with the live. Oh yeah, it does seem to be working okay. Cool. Thank you, Black Swan, for the heart. Thank you. Okay, so I just need to get going with my interactive acrylic. So I just need to load up my palette here. So I'm switching to this palette now. It's kind of a decorator's palette. So it's going to take me a minute or two just to put my paints together here. So a good opportunity to ask questions if you have any. But I'm going to be using interactive acrylics next to depict the animals and the figure in the foreground. So these acrylics are really cool because they you can reactivate them by spraying them with water, so you can blend them much more easily than you can normal acrylics. So I'm still here. I'll chat away. So I'm just popping some burnt umber onto the palette. Some cadmium yellow light. Some crimson. Some, where's it gone? Some ultramarine blue. And somewhere in here I've got some tinting white. And now some titanium white, and then I should be ready to go. Yeah, okay, so the first thing, oh, hi Henry, or Henri, I'm not sure which it is. Thanks for watching. Okay, so now I'm going to start to block in this figure. So the first thing I'm going to do is mix up a flesh tone. So I'm going to grab some yellow, a touch of the crimson, some of the tinting white, a little bit more crimson, and it doesn't have to be exact initially, I just have to get in the right ballpark. So what we'll do is I'm using my flat synthetic, and so it's quite a warm day here today, so I think, yeah, all of this is completely dry. So I can come in, and now it's a little darker than intended, so let's get a bit more tinting white in there. Hopefully that'll do. Also give the surface of the painting just a little spray of water, and my palette as well. I just find that helps the first application of paint glide across the surface of the painting a little more easily. Yeah, that's a bit closer to what I was hoping for. So we'll just block in this chap's head. forearm. Beginnings of a hand without going into too much detail. And I just want to make sure, yeah, it's not too far, the length of that arm isn't too far out. Okay, there we go. There's the beginnings of some flesh being added to that chap. And this same colour I'm going to use to begin to block in the cattle as well. So again, this isn't the exact colour that it's going to end up as, but it's just to get us into the beginnings of the depiction. Okay, there we go. Next up then, let's mix up a slightly darker version of that same colour. So we'll come back in with some cad yellow, a touch of the crimson, a little touch of the ultramarine blue, maybe a bit more. And we can begin to use that as a shadow colour. Again, without getting into too much detail, or no detail really. And again, I can start to use that same colour for the cattle. But what I do want to do is just keep the surface of the painting moist with the water spray. And in doing that, that can produce some nice brush marks as I mentioned with the interactive acrylic. It's the application of this paint is now blending with the first layer that I put down. Okay, so that's working reasonably well so far. So what I want to do next is give the guy some clothes. So I'm just grabbing paper towel to clean my brush. And this time we'll pick up some of the ultramarine blue and a good dollop of the tinting white and mix those together for just a medium blue. Maybe make it a little darker. And again, keep the surface of the painting moist. And I intend to make his trousers a different colour to his top, but for now, this acts as just a good first layer to get down. Okay. So we've now got the beginnings of some cattle and a man in the scene. So I'm just going to stop again for a moment and just grab my next reference. Oh, hi again, Black Swan. Glad you think it's getting better, and thanks for coming back. Yeah, so often with paintings, it's difficult to know how they're going to end up, and very often for my stuff anyway, at least at the beginning, it can be very unclear even to me how it's going to end up, and it's always a bit of a gamble, quite frankly. So we will see how it goes. Let me just grab my. Should have another reference here somewhere, which I can't find at the moment. 1 second. So yeah, if you've just joined, then we'll be back to the easel in just a moment. Okay, good. Right, so the question is, do I want to put any more cattle into the scene? And I think I do. So just thinking about where best to do that. But actually, before I do that, I think I'm going to add a couple of figures, or a couple more figures, I should say, into the picture. So let's do that. So I'm just going to grab a brush with a fairly fine point. So I can kind of paint those in as I go. So coming back in with my blue acrylic. So the first, put in about here. So this will be a lady walking towards us. I've made her a little smaller than I intended, so that's very loosely pop her into position. And we'll put a guy here walking away from us. And then I like the idea of breaking up this right-hand side a bit. So we'll put another lady here, another woman here. But sort of facing away from us. And obviously I will refine all of this as time goes on. Hi Olivia, thanks for watching. Okay, so we've got some more people in there. So the idea is that because I've got these two large figures in the foreground and then a couple in mid-distance, and then eventually I'll put some off in the distance, that's going to lead the eye back. And along, when these are fully rendered and in more dramatic tones, all of that's going to help create a sense of distance in the painting. But what I do want to do now is put, oh, thanks Olivia, glad you like it. Yeah, okay, yeah, come back later if you like, that's great. And then I'm going to put some cattle on the beach now as well. So just need to switch back to my other reference. Here we go. So what we can do is let's have another animal here. Just on the beach, but sort of peeking out from the side of that figure. Oh yeah, thanks, Olivia. Yeah, I worked out what you meant. Thank you. And then what I might do, I might include some belted galloways off in the distance because that's kind of a running theme in my surreal work. So I'll keep these cattle here in the foreground in this kind of light brown color. Then we'll perhaps put some belted galloways here as well. Again, we'll see how it goes. All right, good. So now I can go back to blocking in figures in a bit more of a bold and dramatic way, hopefully. Get a few darker tones in. So one of the ways to go about doing that is to just crack in with the burnt umber. So I think I will do that. We'll just kind of establish a sense of light and dark in the foreground. So as mentioned, just picking up some burnt umber with my flat brush, and let's use that to block in the silhouette of that lady's hair. And then she's got that strap off her bag. Her dress is going to be fairly dark, so I'll block that in as burnt umber as well. And it's not that I'll necessarily keep this color, but just by establishing some tone, it's going to help me resolve the painting more quickly. So I'm going to take that burnt umber and add a little touch of the ultramarine blue to it. So I've got a darker blue, and we'll use that to put in some shadows on the guy as well. And in fact, I may as well press on with that. Let's get a bit of water on the painting. May as well use some of that colour. Put a bit of shadow on this one. Okay, so now we can switch back to the cattle, the foreground cattle. And going back to the burnt umber version. Okay, so we're starting to fill up the composition now. what I would do is clean this brush. And I've just realised I could actually pop in some so I've just cleaned the brush, just picking up some of that orangey colour that I used for the flesh tone on the guy. So we use that for that cow there. And while we're at it, we may as well pop a little bit in there. So I need to refine these figures dramatically, but it's all about creating a starting point fairly quickly. And then I think this cow is going to end up being more of an orangey brown. So while I'm working on that woman, let's mix up more of an orange. Maybe a yellow would have been better, but we'll give her an orangey or a reddish orange shirt for the moment. Bit of water onto this cow. Okay. And then need to clean this brush again. And what I'm going to do next is just go back in on that foreground cow and start to go back in and do a little bit more drawing with the brush. So, and some of these lines that I put in, or patches of colour, will hopefully show through in the finished painting. But what I want to do is just kind of refine some of what I've done so that I can then go in for the final or the near final treatment. So the lower jaw there. And there are shadows falling across the head. Okay, so having done that, what I can do now is begin to add a few highlighted areas. So I'm going to grab some of the tinting white. I'll grab some of the titanium white as well. Touch of the crimson, not too much. And then we'll begin to introduce some lighter tones. So you can see at the moment I'm still very much taking a fairly big brushstroke approach compared to the size of the thing I'm painting. To just model the general form of what's going on. Okay, so let's come back in with titanium white, a touch of the ultramarine blue. And I think I'm going to add a bit of yellow to that to give it running out of paint here. That's okay. Got a light blue there, so we'll just. It's not quite the color I want, but do for now. So I'm just grabbing some more ultramarine blue. Just using this, as you can see, to block in. The guy's trousers. Okay, well, I think that's a, reasonable amount of progress for the hour. So established the scene. It's kind of a weird scene. Started to establish some form and depth, and I'm going to let that dry completely now, and then I'll be back in the near future to finish this one off, or the next one might be a different painting. We'll see how we go. But either way, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.